And we're live. All right. So, wow, we are so delighted to have this amazing, epic team of growing together Sabbath School curriculum with us this evening. And as some of you know, Pastor Manny has joined our conversation last week and gave us a brief background, history, and the paradigm shift we needed. But we have a very special guest that Pastor Manny has invited and come on with. And why don't we give Pastor Christine Wallington some time? If you can do like a virtual applause, let's all give a big round of virtual applause to Pastor Christine. And we're going to give her some time to kind of introduce herself. We know that she is the lead pastor at Costa Mesa Seventh Adventist Church. I don't know if I said that right.
Yeah.
But yeah, and also the head editor for the Growing Together Sabbath School curriculum.
Yes.
And aside from that, I don't have too much info. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over the mic and the time to Pastor Christine Wallington.
I've had a privilege of being part of Southeastern California Conference for quite some time, and I got to go through seminary at Andrews and all that fun stuff. So I'm hoping some of my seminary friends are watching because I publicize it all over the place. But I initially was at Ukaipa Seventh Adventist Church as a family ministries pastor there. And then I've been able to be blessed as the lead pastor. I came in as the associate, leaning in on family ministries at Costa Mesa in the Costa Mesa
Wow.
community. And
Mhm.
they came in, and the senior pastor that I had over here, Nate Furness, he was a great mentor, and he decided to go up to Napa. And so they had me as an interim pastor, and they always described it as they were downloading me, and they finally decided to install. And so my installation, they chose me to be there as the senior lead pastor there, and I got to continue doing ministry to the families. And so
I like that. Downloading and install.
it was very weird to have an installation service at a church that had known me for over 2 years already. And so I had that privilege of them knowing me and choosing to continue to be in ministry with me. And so because I have a heart for family ministries, I'm a mom. I have a little 5-year-old and a little 7-year-old. My daughter, 7.
Amen to that. Mm.
Parents who are
Mhm.
watching, I feel you when it comes to trying to figure out how to be a homeschool parent, teacher, and even trying to work from home. So it's been not just a curriculum that I've used because of ministry, but it's because of being a parent and a mom. And my son's 5 and he's enjoying it, and I get to see this curriculum used for both ages. And so in my church community, I've also taken it on as using it for our sermons. And so
Mhm.
our sermon schedule is very much so focused in on the Growing Together curriculum. And so I have Costa Mesa Seventh-day Adventist Church is about 200, 150. And so it's a good sized church, but it's not a
Mhm.
large church. It's not a church with
Okay.
1,000 plus members. And I only say that because I think a good portion of us pastors who are looking for resources are in that smaller congregation
Yes.
category. And
Mhm.
so the reason I bring that up is because there's ways of saying, how do we use this curriculum so that it actually is beneficial for the senior pastor who is of support to it. That's the first ticker is that the senior pastor, lead pastor, the pastoral team supports this curriculum. And then you can get really creative. And I know that Manny has shared quite a bit about what that looks like to use this in a congregation that is maybe on the older side, but still has this beauty and want for children to lead and for families to feel supported as their children become leaders in the church. So all of that said, I have a heart for family ministries. And I firmly believe that if you want your church to grow and you want to continue moving forward and growing young, then you do that by focusing on family ministries and supporting families.
Mm.
I like
You're
how it's not exclusive to just Sabbath school, because
No.
initially that was the need, right? Was that it came out of needing something for a Sabbath school program, but like you said, it applies to churches that have a passion for children, to families who are needing something extra in discipleship. So it's really cool that it's such a diverse type of thing.
Oh, yeah. No, and I've seen it have an impact on that worship hour. I think I've shared before that I'm gonna keep playing with the volume. Hope everyone can hear me, but put the volume just a little bit more. Okay. I played with the volume, and I'm sorry, my computer apparently. I am not nearly as techy as I probably should be for my age group. I just turned 31 yesterday, and I think I'd actually know how to do all this.
It's okay. I mean, we're all figuring things out as we go,
Yeah, I
and there's
know.
always trial and error, so it's okay. But in the meantime, I just want to just kind of express the fact that your heart and your passion for family ministries and children's ministries, it shows. Like as you were talking about it, it's just evident, very evident from your demeanor, the way you express yourself, the way you engage this conversation. It just shows, and we're grateful that you have this, I guess, opportunity and platform, and also a arena in which you can serve as the editor for this particular curriculum that especially ministers to families, and we're thankful. We're thankful for that. Yes. We are also experiencing some type of connection issues with Alexis here. I think she's trying to get back on. Um, we'll give her some time to get back on. But okay, let's go ahead and transition with this. As we want to just do a little brief recap of what we talked about last week as we were discussing and beginning our conversation for this particular curriculum for young families. And one of the first things that we talked about was a paradigm shift in the discipleship process with our children. So I'm going to turn over time to Pastor Manny to just kind of address that and catch us up on what was discussed and where we can go from there today in our discussion.
Well, if last week we were talking about discipleship, and that the basic premise of discipleship is that what were we saying is this? Discipleship is not taught, but it's caught.
I love that quote. I'm very glad that you mentioned it again. Can you say that one more time?
Yeah. Or reverse it, right? Discipleship is caught, not taught. And oftentimes I think we grow up in a system where we try to teach things, and we do a good job. You know, we teach the Bible, we teach the laws, we teach prophecy, we teach all these things. But there is one thing that really can't be taught, and that's discipleship. Discipleship is caught, and where it's really caught is it's caught in the home, right? Because that's where the major exposure is. So no matter what we do as parents, right? No matter what we do as parents, we by default become the first and foremost discipler of our kids, right? What we do says a whole lot more than what we say,
right?
And that's really critical. And because I think we talk about the paradigm shift in this Sabbath School Quarterly per se, the student quarterly, is not necessarily teaching more facts and information and data, but rather helping the person develop a personal growing relationship with Jesus. And don't misunderstand me, because I'm not trying to say that the other quarterly did not. But I'm just saying, in terms of focus and what we try to do, we're trying to mentor parents and young adults to really begin to have a reflective meditational time where they can just pause and really struggle with the word and see what it means in their life. And I think as they begin to do that, by default, the kids just naturally see that that's something that's important in their parents' lives. And as a result, they begin to say, that's important in my life.
Right. Let me go ahead and kind of, reword and recap what has been shared. the paradigm, we say paradigm shift because before it was lesson driven, it was 1 hour in church, it was dependent on a maybe charismatic and funny and engaging teacher. And we realized that out of 168 hours in the week, the church, the Sabbath school teacher has only 1 hour to maybe do some serious spiritual dent,
Right.
in that kid's life. And now we are transitioning to a paradigm where Sabbath school experience begins, continues, and goes back to the home atmosphere and
Yeah,
environment.
yeah.
And
Sabbath school should be that highlight of the week.
yeah.
So it highlights everything that's done the rest of the week.
So can you actually expand on that, Alexis? What do you mean by highlight? What leads up to the highlight and the climax of Sabbath school on Saturday, on Sabbath?
Well, no matter what curriculum is chosen, the philosophy can and should be that the ongoing teaching and that discipleship process happens at home throughout the week. And
Mm.
well, and it is the same for any Sabbath worship or program. We don't get all of our spiritual food on Sabbath. It has to happen throughout the week. And Sabbath is the highlight, the culmination where we get to enjoy worship together or do the Sabbath school lesson together. But the rest of the week should be filled with that connection. And so it's no different in children's ministries. Throughout the week, kids need to be in touch with God and with their families. And so that's why this type of curriculum is so important.
Yeah,
Right.
we like
Often,
to call it, let me just kind of add what she says. We like to call it introduce a church reinforced at home,
mm.
right? And
Right,
that's
right.
right.
That is perfectly stated, and I love that. And if the introduction at church, and this is the part of the growing together Sabbath school curriculum, how should that introduction be made so that it will be almost what is it, compelling to reinforce back at home? I don't know if that's the direction that we're gonna go with our conversation, but I believe there's two different arenas and roles that the church and the home plays, and there needs to be a strong partnership between the church and the family. And I think we want to engage in that discussion together. Um, I want to actually bring Christine back to the discussion where, in your I guess exposure to this new paradigm and also this engagement of families with the curriculum, what have you seen has been, I guess, most um, impactful to you?
To me personally, or for my families? Because I've seen it for me personally. It's a resource, especially in this season where there's such a need for something to do with your kiddos, and to have it available, and with us being able to make the second quarter and everything else available for anybody who registers has been extremely helpful, because I can get my own parents in my churches online, and I can have them go and access it and use it not just for Sabbath morning but every day of the week. And they've really been able to enjoy having those videos available. And honestly, I've done a good portion of the curriculum in my own house with my kiddos as a preparation
Yes,
for Sabbath, and
that's
take
best place.
yeah, and to kind of see how they get excited about it.
Right.
It's very interactive because you cannot.
Now's a good time to test drive it.
And I can tell you, unless I understand the fullness of what we're expecting our parents to kind of walk through, and I use the word expecting because I honestly have seen that as a bit of a pressure from our parents and our families before. When we were not in quarantine, when we were not meeting in this way, everyone said, I have no time, I have no time, I can't actually do anything. But apparently, now with all this time on our hands, parents are asking and begging, what can I do with my kids? They're driving me crazy. And so, like a few Sabbaths ago, I said, grab some bags and let's do a cute activity that is from the lesson directly. And so it's been very helpful to be able to have this resource, and to be able to see that parents are able to look at it and study deeper of what topics we're going through. We just went over Easter, been going through what it means that Jesus was the king and all the different avenues in which that meant. And so to have the parents and their own understanding of the Bible go deeper has been really exciting, because now they're not only teaching their children, but they're getting extremely excited about what they're teaching and learning sometimes the gospel for the first time. Even though they've known all the talking points all their lives, now this is becoming transformational for them as they parent and put on this new persona of, I can be a spiritual leader for my children. So I have,
What uh,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
what makes that difference? What's the difference? What is the key in that?
I really think, I was going to say, let me add to that. I really think one of the key difference is this, is that when they're sitting talking at home, they're not they're not necessarily reading a quarterly that somebody has already hashed out for them. Because let's face it, oftentimes we read a quarterly that somebody hashed out of what the Bible verse is about, right? But in the way that we do family worship at home, all they're really doing is simply opening the Word of God and reading the passage together as a family and beginning to really talk what this means. And I think what makes it exciting is this, is that parents have the opportunity to begin to share what that passage means in their own life.
Hmm.
And having kids hear that, it's got to be just as powerful as hearing what the pastor has to say in the pulpit, right?
Hmm.
Okay. Here's the thing. Here's a question that came in from Celia, and she actually thanked us for having this discussion. And this was her question: how can we motivate our parents to actively participate in this? Just to actually recap, Christine told us that this curriculum was birthed in the home, in the family context, and in the everyday life of the interaction with their toddlers and children at home. And now this particular resource is available for parents. But what is that next step? How can we motivate them to actively participate in the discipleship process? Any thoughts?
I would say, just because I feel like it's close to home for me, because I'm in the trenches with a 5 and a 7-year-old. The biggest thing for motivation is to make it attainable. I think a lot of us parents are very paranoid that we're going to do it wrong. And we'd
Mm.
rather have someone who's done seminary training or who has gone through all of the different steps of understanding the Bible, or even have someone who maybe has never doubted to do all of this. And the reality is, kids don't want that, especially your kids. Because regardless of if you think you are doing it right to teach your children about God, they don't care if you're doing it right. They just want to know that you are the one doing it.
Mhm.
Mm,
We
mm,
Yep.
understand fully that the parents, no matter how many other influences they have,
mm,
the parents are always going to be the primary influencer. And that could be parents, that could be parents, that could be whoever the guardian, the one who actually is with them all the time. That's the one that is their model. That's the one they're looking at for faith and understanding how faith applies. And so just knowing first and foremost that you don't have to be perfect at teaching your children about God, because the reality is you already are. It's just a
mm,
matter of if you want to tap into that part of your parenting a little
mm,
bit more and
mm.
not do it alone, because that's what we're here for.
So it's just the sheer recognition that, hey, I'm the primary influencer to my kids. That should be motivation enough.
And that's how we started this conversation. It's caught. Discipleship is
Mm,
caught. And just
mm,
as much as we like to think that discipleship is the only thing that's caught, it's not.
mm,
Everything you do as a parent is being caught by your children.
Mm.
And so you get to choose as much as possible. And we do this in different ways as parents, where we try to find ways that we can always be on, always be perfect, always deal with the stresses of life in front of our children as if we're got it all figured out. But those moments when you don't and you deal in a healthy way, that teaches children problem solving in a whole different dynamic. And we're
That's
constantly
true.
doing that model. So I think if we just allow that messiness of life that we're teasing through with our kids to also be part of our faith journeys with our children, then it invites them into a conversation with God that just makes faith so much more attainable, applicable, understandable. So the whole premise, and I'm sure that Manny has shared this, but the whole premise behind the Growing Together curriculum is that you do it on the way. This is not something where you have to have one specific space in your house or one specific couch or one specific book. This isn't something where you have to have all these external setup. Okay, now we're doing church. Now we're doing family worship. As wonderful as that may be, it's not always practical. And so it's not attainable. So this
Hmm.
is on the way.
Right.
Yeah. So
Mm.
I don't know how much of we shared, but home connections have all of these activities you can do in the car with your kiddos talking about God, because the more normal we make conversations about faith and God, the more it actually becomes part of discipleship. And this is how we walk and talk as Christians, as Seventh-day Adventist Christians.
I was gonna
They
say thank
they
you, Justin, to put up home connection because I knew she was gonna bring it up.
I just
No, I just so let me go from the church standpoint because I'm hearing her question. How can we motivate our parents? I think as a church now, because let's face it, we're all pastors, right? We all work in the church. So how do we now get to a point where we help our parents get to the point where they are not guilted into trying to mentor their kids, but actually doing it as a natural process. And I think the way that happens is actually creating an environment at church where the parents themselves can meet, right, and talk life.
Okay.
So let me give an illustration.
Mm-hmm.
You know, last week we talked about, and stop me if I start to get really preachy, but last week we talked about having Sabbath school as a VBS style, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what does that mean? You start together, kind of a VBS style, you sing together, you introduce the lesson together, you bring a lot of energy together, you celebrate your birthdays, you do all of that so that the kids make sure that they want to get there, they don't want to miss anything, just like you do VBS.
Mm-hmm.
And then there comes a point, right? There comes a point then when all the kids, either depending on what the size of your church is, it's either if they're a small group, they begin to rotate around into the different parts of the lesson, or if they're a larger church, they split between among the different teachers, right? They go to their kindergarten class, their primary, their junior, their teen class, and so forth. When you're having the VBS program at the beginning, the question is, where are all your parents at this time?
Mm.
Right?
they're
Because,
That
congregating.
is so true.
right?
Yep.
So here's the statistics that we find in our current Sabbath school.
Mm.
Where are the parents in the current Sabbath school? There's the small faithful that's teaching the classes, right? Two, there are those who are roaming the hallways. Three, there's a few who actually attend the adult Sabbath school class,
Mm-hmm.
but not the majority, probably a very, very small portion. And then four, there are what we call drive-by parents. And I'm going to say this carefully, but these are parents who drop off their kids at Sabbath school. At least that's what happens in our setting in California. Drop off their kids in Sabbath school, and maybe later they come back and pick them up, right? And what we're seeing a lot, especially if the kids are really young, is that the parents will stay in Sabbath school, and what do they do afterwards? They go home, many, especially if they have little tiny ones. So what would happen if after the VBS, after they begin to split up after that initial VBS, what would happen if now those parents who are sitting in the back watching the program, because that's where they're going to be, right? Sitting in the back watching the program, what would happen if after the kids leave, we put out the breakfast pastries? We put out the breakfast orange juice. We put out, these little goodies that allow for fellowship for our parents to take place. And as the parents are congregating and mingling and having their own little cafe, we ask ourselves, hey, how's life going? And then on the last 20 minutes, we actually take the time to then open the Bible and with our parents study the same thing that our children are studying. Notice what happens. They're going to study the same thing that their kids are studying. And if we as pastors are the disciplers there, we can then actually help our parents and say, you know, this week, as you have the opportunity to dive into the Word of God with your kids and begin to kind of give them maybe little tips or little things that they can do. And that's what Home Connection does, right? Little tips and little things that they can do. We actually pass those Home Connection to the parents in that class so that when they go to their home, they feel like they've been armed. They feel like they've been resourced. They feel like they're not starting from scratch. In essence, what you know, your parenting class has become a little mini teacher's class that goes home as they now, you know, do the small
Teacher
group.
empowerment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that works really well because then everybody's on the same page because your parents are your teachers, but parents still need encouragement, love, guidance, and even some of them may not study their Bible on a regular basis. So you're starting at that. As pastors, you start there. And I think, if parents get excited about the content, the stories, what they're discovering about the Bible, they're going to want to share it with their kids. But I also say that the proof is in the pudding. So parents love to see their kids get excited and love to see their kids learning and connecting the dots. And this particular curriculum helps with that. So yeah, you have the take home points but everything that they're doing is very hands-on and very engaging. And because of that, kids love it and they enjoy it. And now I'm not a parent. I'm an aunt. I have a nephew that's 10. But every time I see the lights go on for him, it's really exciting. And I love to watch him and encourage him. So I think it's the same with the parents is you give them the material, the content, you teach it to them in their own lesson time. And the kids are learning it at the same time. When they go home, they have something that they can get excited about together.
Yeah.
That's so important. That's so important. It's not like
just to add to that, I hope you guys can hear me a little better now. I switched around. Okay, good. Yay.
Much better.
To add to that, some of the activities as a parent, I can say it's kind of nice to have something tangible because not only for keeping the kiddos interested, but also to have something tangible for teaching that lesson because it clicks for the parent. And the best way to learn yourself is to teach it and to have something that's interactive that fits well with the lesson and actually shows it and expresses it. There was one recently that we did where it was for the Kinder First line, and I did it with my kiddos, and it was different senses in little paper bags. And so you had taste tests. Yeah. So you had taste, smell, and all these. And as you're pulling out each one, the kids got so excited, like, oh, like bread and fishes, and talking about Jesus feeding and all of this. And so you have this illustrative thing that is exciting in and of itself, but it's also an aid to telling the story. So even if you don't know everything, and this is one thing I'd say to the parents, if you don't know the whole story from the Bible, amen. Go and open that text with your children and read it together. And I like to say a point that if you've never read the stories that we're learning together with your children, then having the kids see you get excited about learning something new, that is priceless. There's just something magical about that. And your perspective as someone who's maybe just coming to the text is completely unfiltered. Some of us have have grown up with certain Bible texts and we cannot see it any differently. And so people, when they come to a text and they read it for the first time in their own context and perspective, I like to share with people that's treasure. Some of us who have grown up with it don't get to have that experience because we feel like we know it all. But when you come to a text, when you come to a lesson where you don't know it all and you're willing to learn, then it makes it that much more exciting for your children and for you in your own faith walk.
So this is almost like a revamping of Sabbath school for also for the parents. This is actually a new angle that I've never kind of given much thought to. But parents do really need that spiritual filling. And I think, as you guys just said, enthusiasm is contagious. And if both the parent and the child is enthusiastic about what they learn and they're just going at it and just really sharing with one another what they have learned, man, that's a beautiful picture of the family being discipled and growing together. The whole
Yes.
the whole purpose, right? It's not, oh, I'm the parent, I don't need to know anymore, and you're the one that need to know. So what did you learn in Sabbath school today? Memorize this very verse. It's not one of those one-way street, you're commanding
Yeah.
things. It's actually, hey, mommy learned this or daddy learned this, and this is really exciting for me. What did you learn that was really exciting for you?
Yeah.
Whole different dynamic. I really love
Oh
that.
yeah. 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 It doesn't have to be a know-it-all. It doesn't have to be, I'm going to come in here and tell you what to do. It's a journey that we get to share. And it takes a lot of pressure off for those of us who want to know it all and realize we don't.
Don't have
Yes.
to memorize
Yeah.
things and have everything just so.
Pastor
You
Christine, I have a question for you. You said that you do preach. One of the things that we used to emphasize in the beginning was to use the scope and sequence of the growing together and to use it as kind of like a lectionary, right?
Hmm.
And so here's what happened. The third Sabbath in January, when we used this for the very first time, we got a phone call. And the phone call was this. They said, "We get it." And we said, "What do you mean we get it?" And he says, when the pastor started to preach, and he was preaching on the same material that we studied in Sabbath school, my kids all stopped doing what they were doing, looked at us, and said, "Mom, Dad, the pastor is talking about what we learned in Sabbath school." And
connecting
she
the
said,
dots.
"Yeah," and
Oh
so
man,
it was
that's
so
beautiful.
exciting to see them put their guide down and all the whatever they were scribbling on, and actually connecting with the pastor, because for the very first time they felt like the pastor was speaking their language and talking the same thing that talking to them about something that they know. But so the question I have for you, Pastor Christine, is how has your congregation felt? Because I know you said you're not a very large family, so you have some kids, you have some that are
Yeah.
older, but you kind of kept this lectionary throughout over a year now, or close to about a year. How have your parents felt about that, preaching on that thing and preaching on the same thing that the kids are doing for Sabbath school? How has that gone?
I think it's gone quite well. We actually, if you saw, I think it was PUC put out a statement because they were wanting to know similar of how the parents were responding. And I shared a story where I was preaching and I simply, what we do as pastors preaching, we ask a question to their congregation in hopes that everyone's actually still awake and listening and engaging. And so I asked the question of what was happening in the story. And the first person who looked up and spoke was a 10-year-old little boy named Jackson, who was sitting about the third
Oh
or fourth
man,
row back. And he
I love this
responded
story
so
already.
quickly because he had just learned that in Sabbath school. And so there was those moments that happen, and it's becoming a little more common, where the kiddos are the ones who are engaged in the sermon. Whereas before it felt like they were just checked out. This is that half hour where the pastor gets to talk forever. And now they're feeling like this is a conversation that they get to be part of. And of course, as a parent, to be able to see your child engage makes you even more so want to know what this is about. But on the other end, we have also incorporated, and Manny will probably talk about this a little bit more, doing something as a family before Sabbath school. And so the first Sabbath of the month, we do something called Growing Connections, where we do at 9:30 a.m. a breakfast, and everybody comes out. The first Sabbath that we did it, everyone was like, "How come we can't do this every Sabbath?" I was like, "Are you going to make breakfast every Sabbath?" So if we do a little 10-minute breakfast moment, we have some VBS songs playing on the TV, and we do some of the motions and have that go. And then our UCI group, which is a can Campus Adventist Network. It's a group that's at the UCI campus, and they're young adults, and they are the ones leading our children in the lesson. And so we do this little 30 minutes of sharing a meal together, the kiddos and the parents all doing this work of the lesson, which is the Connect activity from, and it's the same story for everybody. So it makes it very simple to do this. And they all go into their own separate Sabbath school time. We'll share in what the lesson and what the story will be and start the Sabbath just as community. And I can tell you there has been this resurgence of community when we started doing this, where everyone just felt like, wow, I feel like I came home. I feel like this is family. And it wasn't that we weren't, and people who never talked to each other are finally talking to each other. I saw a whole bunch of dads coming together and sharing and
Oh
talking
man,
together, which is honestly
Wow.
quite rare. You'll see moms talk to each other like crazy, but to see dads come together and
that's
want to talk a
borderline
bit more
miracle.
and talking to my
Dads coming
associate. So
together.
it was very, it had all of the little, it had all the prerequisites for community. And so when it all came together, it just naturally happened without it having to be this forced paradigm.
Man, wow.
Yeah.
So let's actually boil down and dig down into the nitty gritty and the actual curriculum and how that whole process looks like. I have some visual aid here. If you want to point me to something, then I can just pull it up. But for anyone that is willing to begin this journey with this curriculum, can you just kind of journey with them to tell them where the starting point is, and the different suggestions that you guys give out to families that are starting this for the first time, that kind of ordeal? Can we do that?
Yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen.
Okay.
I don't know if you guys can see it.
All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and add that. There you go.
This is our website, and we're blessed because this quarter, Pacific Union is actually sponsoring the entire quarter, so that our churches can have access and everything. And what's cool is they can everything in the curriculum is free, and so they can, if they were let's say if you're a teacher and you want to teacher or a parent and you want to do this, you just go ahead and click on teachers. Oh, this is not gonna work for me because I have the password on. And there's a little registration. There's kind of a little registration thing that all it does is ask for your name and your email address and what church you are. So it just allows us to know what churches are participating, and it gives you the access code to the website. Oh, maybe it isn't. Let me click here to register. Is it going to make me do it from scratch?
By the way, the website here is growingtogether.church.
Yeah,
Growing
it's
Together.
either Growing Together Church or growingtogetherchurch.org or growingtogether.church, right? And
Yes.
and so perfect. I went to the other site. So here it is. This is, if you are registering for the very first time, here's what you have. It's very simple. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to put my name, and so I'm going to put my email address.
For those of you who are watching, please follow along if you really do want to figure this thing out. It's either growingtogether.church or growingtogetherchurch.org, and you just follow through the process.
And I'm going to put my church name. This is the church that I attend. This is where my membership is, and then I just put the name of the state. And so I actually haven't done this, so I'm curious to see what happens next. Oh, please accept our condition. And then it says how many persons in your family. And so it allows us to know, and the average size for most families, I'm surprised, between 4 and 5. There's some that are 3. So I'm going to put here right now, there's four in the family. And search print or online. So I'm just going to say I want online. And so there's a summary of the information I do. And once I submit it, let's see what happens. Oh, there it is. It says request accepted, thank you. And it goes ahead and gives you the login information and the password. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
going to save it for 30 seconds. So I'm just going to try to remember that GT2020 #2. And the password is all lowercase Sabbath. So when I go in there, so I'm going to put that, GT2020 #2 lowercase
Mm.
Sabbath.
Okay, while you're explaining that, there's another question that came in. Is this for all children groups, as in all the way from beginners, primary, pre-K, kinder first, primary, juniors, and early teens? Like,
Perfect. See,
what's the scope?
there it is. You see it right there. So we have a beginner curriculum, we have a kinder first curriculum, a primary, juniors, and depending on how your kids are, your middle school will either take the junior curriculum or the teen curriculum. We're finding that the teen life curriculum is really better suited for middle school. And so we're actually venturing into maybe creating a more what we call senior high ministry curriculum that we're looking into to add to this. And then Discipler is the parent curriculum. But we've had many young adults who says, I use the Discipler curriculum because it doesn't really say that this is you as a parent, but it really is a devotional time. And so
it's fluid.
Say it again, Alexis.
I said it's fluid. They can choose which one based on where their kids are. If I have a kid that's more advanced, maybe they would pick an older curriculum.
Right.
Okay.
Because for my kid, I told him to do kinder first, and he was like, no, I'm primary. So we upgraded up to primary. Yeah.
Because kids develop at different stages. So, something might be more suited for them at a different level.
So you were talking about parenting. Let me just point this out really quick. Yeah. So there's that Home Connect program. And so if you were a parent, that home connection is what actually, I don't know if you're seeing this next coming up. Oh, perfect. This is the one that helps you, gives you tips and suggestions on how to have family moments with your children. And that's the front of the curriculum. And in the back of the curriculum, it briefly summarizes what the kids are learning. So if you look at this, it's really simple. Like the beginner this is the first week, Jesus is risen. It's a very simple thing what the beginners learn. Notice that kinder first, primary, and junior are really all learning the same principle. What changes is the connection and the application for every class, because it's for their age readiness. And then the teens, of course, have their own thing. But if you look at all of them, you realize, they're all talking about Jesus, our humble King. It may be titled differently, it may have a little different twist, but every single one has a little bit of summary so that you know what everybody is studying as a parent.
Yeah, they're age appropriate. And as the discipler side of it, because this is something you would get on the discipler side, on the kiddo side, they have something called field notes. Yeah, and the field notes, and then for beginner, it's called take and talks. But the field notes are one part of it they do in the classroom, which is an activity or a coloring page. And the other part of it is a description of the devotional they would have with their parents. So they have this little home connection, just to use that phrase, from the discipler side to the kids, as parents are encouraged and equipped to be able to lead their kids. And then from the kids side, for the parents to say, this is what to expect. So it kind of, I don't know how some people might not appreciate this as much, but it does set the kids up to also invest in their own faith and say, hey guys, mom, dad, this is what we're going to do. This is what my teacher told me I'm supposed to be doing. So let's do it together. So it's trying to encourage both to focus in on faith together.
It's also simpler than some of the other content that's out there. So it's not difficult
Yeah.
for the kids to do, or for the parents to encourage their kids to do, which I like a lot, because
Oh,
sometimes
this is
it's
super
simple.
user friendly.
Yeah,
you
it's
see it,
very
Yes.
and it's
simple.
almost intuitive. It's intuitive to know, oh, this is how we can do it. And I would strongly encourage anyone who is now like getting fired up for this particular curriculum to visit the website, right? growingtogetherchurch.org. And once you get there, I think it's pretty standard on how you can get started and how you can, you can experiment
Mhm.
with a particular lesson. And it's almost like
Yeah,
what is it? It's free trial.
it is.
But it's and you got nothing to lose. You
No.
got nothing to lose by trying out maybe a week or two to see how that enhances your experience with Sabbath school and your engagement with your children, and how you begin to just grow in Christ together. So
Yes.
I would definitely recommend that.
Yes.
I, 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 I think I cut off somebody. Like, I'm sorry, but I just had to just mention that. So if
Oh,
you wanted
no,
to
no.
continue to
I do want to show one thing, because I think this is the cool part. If you put back the screen,
okay.
I do want to show.
Hmm.
Um, this is the the teacher side, but the student side is really just as fun, because
Yeah.
Oh, students
the
have different login.
Yeah.
same login,
Yeah,
same
there's different
login,
It's just a
sections.
Okay.
different drop
yeah,
down.
but it's a different area. But now they could either look at their student quarterly using a flip book, or downloading it using
Mhm.
a PDF, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and what makes it really neat is, if when they download this into their iPad, now they can write, they can scroll. It's really something that we've been pretty excited about.
Yeah.
It might take a little while to load up here, because it's uploading the whole book,
Yeah.
kind of thing. But this is kind of where there it is. So it's very kid friendly. If if
Mm-hmm.
if if you see this, it's very kid friendly, and it talks to the parents. But then the kids can begin to do. It's
Yeah.
it's still
Yeah, you gotta wait
downloading.
it to load. It's loading.
and and you saw there right at the beginning, it said note for the parents. So even though this is material that's for the kiddos, we are always finding new ways to encourage that the parents are there with them
Mm.
walking through this journey. And so there's a note for the parents, even though it's in the kids magazine, to say, hey, this is how your children will be walking through this, and here's how we're going to continue to equip you, even though this is their own content.
Mm.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, like for the parent that is, I guess, reading this and going through with their children that is primary age, like as they're going through it, what would be your counsel and advice on in the process? Uh, do you just quickly read the lesson and pray and then go to sleep, or like usually for any type of Sabbath school quarterly lesson, and that's how I grew up. I'm gonna be vulnerable for a second. Um, my parents just told me to read it, and we just read it, and we prayed, and we went to sleep. And I did my lesson. I
Yeah.
did my lesson daily. That's sort of how I grew up.
Yeah.
But like, just tell us, like, what would be the engagement process with the parents and the children? What
Christine, you
happens
want to
after?
take this? Or you
Yeah.
want me to
I
take it?
can. I would
Go.
just say that my part of it, I think, Manny, hopefully you could add to this, that there's in this content, and I would just say this as an overall for the parents, you need to come first in your own faith journey. So we have a discipler that's a devotional that's for the parents. So parents, we encourage you. Actually, with my congregation, they didn't really want to do the whole teaching thing. They like the Sabbath School Quarterly from the conference, and they like to have their own discussions on the text. And so what I did was give the parents just that devotional from the discipler side, so that
Mm.
they at least had their own devotion that was focused on the lesson. And then on the kids side, for the kiddos, if you look at the book, there's some great interactiveness. So it's not, and even the questions that we're asking are not, okay, look at the text and fill this in. it is very much so asking questions. How would you apply this in your actual life? And it's trying to always relate it back to how are you going to walk and talk in Christ differently because of learning this. And so if it is a lesson that you do in the morning, at noon, on the way to school, either way, it's fitting for it to be part of normal life. So it doesn't have to be this chore. It doesn't have, because we've all grown up that way. And I'm glad that you've been open and vulnerable about that, because it's true. We've all been like,
we were on the same boat
check,
growing up. Oh,
yeah, check
just
box,
so
and you're
comforting to
done.
hear that.
Yeah, and then like, you're saved. Your
I was not
salvation is
alone.
assured. But this is asking the question of what does this mean for how you will walk differently in life? And then also for parents, what does this mean for your faith journey? And we're going to equip and encourage you in your journey with your kids. So it's not this daunting task where you have to prove something, but just a journey, walking together.
Right.
It is demonstrating that it's not just every once in a while that we engage, but it's like you said, it's in the car, it's at the breakfast table, it's while you're playing with your toys at home, those types of places. You can think about the Bible and God anywhere you go.
Yeah.
No matter what you're doing.
And I think the more normal we make.
I was going to say, while you guys are talking about that, Deuteronomy 6, right? This is the whole premise of the foundation of Deuteronomy 6. What this Deuteronomy 6 says. Teach them to the kids when they wake up, when you walk along the road. What is that? Well, when they're in the car, right?
On the way.
When they get up, when they go to bed, when they walk along the way. Basically, you know what? In every opportunity that we can have with our kids, we can use that as a conversation to engage life, right?
That's right.
That's what I like to say. That worship is about it's about relationship. It always boils down to that, right? It's about living a relationship, and yes, the facts and information are cool and important, but at the end of the day, it's about the relationship that is formed between parents and child.
Yes.
That's really important.
Yeah. And also to encourage that relationship, focus on our relationship with God. And all of it flows together. And I would say also, for coming back to discipleship, that there is a need for us to normalize talking about the gospel, talking about God, because the more normal it is, the more likely we're going to share our faith, the more likely we're going to do discipleship in our conversations with someone at the grocery store. I mean, especially right now, there's just so much need for people to have some sense of hope. And if we're doing that just from being at the grocery store talking to someone about God, or just when you're in the park talking to their parent, which doesn't happen anymore, but in spaces where you are able to connect, that it's become normal to just
in
say,
some
well,
ways,
because there's sometimes we put this weight on talking about faith and talking about the gospel. It's like you have to have everything, all your ducks in a row, or have everything perfect, and that makes it much harder for us to actually just talk and share with our friends and family. But friendualism, or just talking in a way of saying, I'm walking with God and I'm going to share that story with those around me, that has a change, that has a gospel spreading power.
Right. It's not just doing your devotions, you're living a devoted life. I really believe that we have somehow limited church conversations to church. And now that we don't have a church building anymore, we are forced to become the church.
Amen.
I believe that's the silver lining of our coronavirus because we no longer have a building to rely on.
No.
We literally just have to be a church at home.
Yeah. And can you imagine all of these live stream services? People are in their own homes, and maybe their spouse doesn't believe and would never come with them to church, but here they are watching church online at home. I've been having and those stories of like, wow, my grandma's in there watching a sermon, and let me go watch too because this is engaging. And all of a sudden, church, you have these people who would never step into a church building being part of a church experience. Yeah.
Justin, can I ask you to put the address, the URL up again? I had an email asking where they can look at this curriculum.
Email?
Yeah, so
website.
I had somebody email me and ask where they could find it. Could you put it up on the screen once more? Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 All right. Yeah, that is the website. That's where everything is. It's well made. I am actually very impressed with the website, the way you
Yes.
designed it, all the different and detail work that was done in creating that, the curriculum. I just want to give a proper shout out to Christine and her team. Man, this is an amazing resource that can be utilized for any family that wants
Can
to
I-
grow up and get on the discipleship journey. So
Andre Dos Santos. I'm just gonna put his name out there.
Shout out to Andre. He's a web guy. Andre Dos Santos.
So good.
Awesome.
oh, is he the designer, the graphic? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah. For the
You
website.
you you have our respect. You have our respect.
Andre.
Oh man, all right. So actually let me go ahead and move on to another question that I wanted to ask you guys is how did you get the buy-in from children's pastors and youth pastors and begin to work together as a team? And it doesn't have to be children's and youth pastors, but how did you formulate a core team of pastors and church leaders to really spearhead this movement for families? Like how did that look like? What did that look like in the beginning? I know you guys are laughing because this is a story that you've been wanting to tell. So I'm gonna go ahead and give you that time.
I should talk. Do you want me to tell my side, Manny, or you want to go?
Sure.
Okay. Well, my mom, she is a pastor in Hemet, and she was like, "Hey, I can't go to this children's ministries convention. I got a ticket. You want to take it instead?"
Mhm.
And so I went on a complete whim to Frisco, Texas, and it was a whole children's ministries focus, and it was a beautiful training moment. We had a place to stay at a house. It was like I don't know, he had gotten the whole house to rent for us. So it was really a family oriented feeling. And so we went there and we completely ditched the training. Completely. We went there to do this training and we ditched it and we stayed at home and we talked about kind of some of the dreams that I know Manny's had for probably about a decade. And I know I've heard from him of trying to get everyone on the same page, sharing the stories, all in the same story, different ages. And so we finally sat down and it was Beverly Maravilla, Shauna Campbell, Isaac Kem, myself, and Manny, and we tackled this out. And I think we finally said, it's time. We looked at the climate of what we were experiencing in our churches and looked at our schedules a little bit.
Wait, when was this exact time frame? The in the timeline, was it like a year ago, 2 years ago?
It's been 2 years.
2 years ago. Okay.
We had a whole year of this being out and about and published, and then it was the summer before that year. It's about a year and a half. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add, Pastor Manny?
Well, so that's the birth. Right? The birth of, last week we talked about a good idea versus a God idea. When everybody just came in a circle and just kind of, you could just tell the spirit. And it was.
Yeah. He's going to cry.
Yeah.
Oh, Manny.
No.
Who made you cry? Who? No.
No, God has done. Right? It's been an amazing journey. But your other question was how did we get everybody to come on board? And so I'm going to have a little confession here. It's been a journey. It's been a journey. It's one thing for a pastor to buy into the philosophy. It's another thing to get a church to change its ways.
Exactly.
And through today, we are going through that struggle. I mean, let's be honest, right? We have 170 churches in Southeastern California Conference. And probably only about 1/4, or maybe a little bit more now, has really completely bought into the process, because change is hard.
It is.
Right?
Yeah.
And no one's a prophet in their own home. I mean, we get letters from all around, from Canada, Texas, Hawaii, right? I mean, and it's, but the blessing has been, if there's something that's been a blessing on this coronavirus, is that it's the first time where all our children's pastor really came together
Mm,
and,
mm,
and began to really look at the curriculum and do it week after week. Now we're on our 6th week. I just don't think, I really think that all those pastors are going to go, and I don't think they're going to go back to the way things were. They've all told me
no, we
that,
can't. We
yeah,
can't.
Yeah.
you can't.
No, things are not. They're not going to be the same for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And I like
So
to just
how
add
many?
that there's this hunger to have families reconnected. And I would
Yes.
say, in a very biased way, that our Adventist roots, our Adventist church, there's this huge focus on family worship and being able to come together, if just at the brass tacks of having worship together, the 11 o'clock hour all together. And as much as we may force our kids not to sit quietly in church, there is still a beauty to being able to have all of the church, all the family together worshiping.
Yes.
And to bring that into a tangible, applicable, attainable way throughout the week in that Sabbath school hour as well is something that we were all very passionate about. And, as a mom, to see that starting to come out and seeing that there was a good framework and others who are passionate about this too, just made that buy-in so much more inspirational and worth the struggle and worth the effort, because it's not easy. But yeah.
Yes.
And Justin, I know I was honored and blessed when you sent me a picture of your kids, so you could share how it's affected your family.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me be. Yeah, I got to be honest. Ever since COVID-19 became our reality and we began to have more time as a family, for me, as a transitioning to this post to lead out young adult ministries and to be constantly in interaction with young families, young adults that are married or have young children, it's been always been a burden of mine to be able to render a resource that would really enhance the level of their experience and spirituality. So.
Yeah.
I was searching, I was praying, and before I got here, I had the brief introduction from Pastor Manny, who came to Atlanta when I was pastoring there, and I was reminded of what existed. So when COVID-19 hit, I said, "Okay, I'm gonna give this a try, and I'm going to go through this process, and if it really blesses me and my family, I'm going to do everything I can to get this word out to any family that wants to join this journey."
Wow.
So, so we said, all right, let's go ahead and turn on the Growing Together that church, and we watched that first one. And this is no lie. My second child, she's 2 years old.
Oh.
She watched the whole thing without moving. I was like, she was so captivated, like singing. I mean, she moved, but I'm saying like she didn't, like get distracted and do something else. Like she was riveted to what was happening, like going through the songs and seeing her own like fellow peers on screen, and everything was shot from home, and just watching that because the entire content was home produced with parents with their children. It just really hit home. And we said, all right, this is the journey that we're going to take. And I told you in my last session, my son, Enoch, for the first time, I guess, in his life, ever since going through this particular curriculum, he said, "Dad, I want to read for myself the story of Jesus' death and his sacrifice on the cross and his resurrection." He opened that Bible for himself, was sitting right beside me when I had my Bible. I never forced him. I never told him to do any of that. He opened that Bible himself. He started reading in Matthew. By the time it was done, I was just bawling because it was the first time that I saw him voluntarily reading his Bible, being blessed by it. And I said, "Man, this is I'm getting very emotional. But this is probably one of the best things that has happened through the coronavirus ordeal. That's why I said, as soon as that happened, I was like, I need to contact Pastor Manny, and I need to
Absolutely.
set up something where we can talk about this and really begin to get the word out. So that's my personal journey with my children. Oh man, I'm sorry.
Wow.
But I mean, for me, and I told you before, growing up, everything was a must. You should, you have to, because you're a PK, you have to memorize. And if I didn't memorize, I was in an Asian American home. Spanking was a natural thing because I didn't. There's so much trauma I can talk about growing up about how I was discipled. And I was like, when I grow up, I'm never going to do that to my children.
No, yeah.
I want it to be everything just organic, voluntary, and just give it time. And when this particular scene happened, I was like, this is the beginning of something that something beautiful that can transpire. So that was my journey, and then not only did Enoch and Stella realize that it was blessing them, they saw that it was a lot of other kids like on screen, and other pictures that was coming in. They're like, hey, we're in a community of other families that are growing together, and they're excited about it, and they are waiting for Sabbath. It's a celebration. After going through everything, they want to celebrate, even through the coronavirus, seeing everything that's on the screen. They want to be part of that experience. So yeah, that's my story, and it's been a blessing.
Amen.
Yeah.
We should end on that note, man.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Well, thank you for putting me on the spot, making me cry. You got to give that to Pastor Manny, because ever since in academy years, he's been known to making people cry. So,
Right.
forte expertise. There are actually a few more questions, because that's the question I wanted to ask. Before COVID-19 and during COVID-19, you mentioned about the transition that happened among, I guess, the team, the membership that actually took this thing forward. Because I'm just wondering how you guys said, okay, let's try to continue this movement even through the coronavirus pandemic. I want to kind of have you guys, speak into that and see what kind of blessing that was, gleaned through making this happen.
Yeah. Did you want me?
Did you guys want to talk about that, or?
Go, Manny, go.
This has been such a faith journey for me. So it's gonna sound weird, but it was a year ago, and we were sitting down and planning this curriculum, that I shared this to the team during my devotional time. God literally, like a voice, told me, what you are doing here will multiply around the world. And Christine, I don't know if you remember, but I kind of shared that with the team, right? Before we really get kind of said, God said that this is going to go all around the world. Yeah. And when our first quarter and second quarter came about, I began to have little, this is embarrassing, I had these little doubts.
Yeah.
Because our first quarter, we had 20 churches. Right? It was, even in our own conference, it was so hard to get people excited about the curriculum and getting it out. Man, that first quarter or two was such a journey, and it was such a slow process that almost a year later into this thing, when we're about 50 churches, I'm going like, God, was I just wishing, or were you really prophesying, or was I just wishing? And God gave me another reality check about a couple of weeks later when I was having my devotion and kind of said, "See, I told you so." When literally we are now getting feedback from Philippines. People are signing up from Philippines,
Mm.
Korea,
Mm-hmm.
Jakarta,
Mm-hmm.
uh, Canada, just coming. All Saskatchewan, Saskatoon, all over the U.S. Whether it's Michigan and Florida and just literally everywhere that people are just kind of signing up, of which we never would have had access to in the past.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And because of this unusual circumstance, this new reality, God used this. And I don't want to say that, God caused this or this would happen, but it was kind of strange that God uses whatever circumstance is there.
Yeah.
And it really has been a lot easier. I mean, our pastors now are talking about it because, um, I was hearing in one of the pastors' meeting. They were when we were talking about this, they were chatting on the side. We just want to thank our children's ministry because this Sabbath school has really been a blessing to our church. And I'm seeing this from churches who have not ventured into this program. And and now what I'm beginning to see is an avalanche or a snowball, not avalanche, but a snowball effect. Where it
Mm.
starts small and it's starting to go. And now the blessing has been, with Alexis, you made my day last week when you began to just speak words of encouragement and affirmation of what you've done, and and
Mhm.
I've and on Sabbath I would get texts of encouragement from other children's ministry director like from Florida. Judy goes, we put this up every week. Judy Smith, we put this up every week and we show it. And um, now I had Daryl Foy from Nevada, Utah, and she called me last week and she said, "I'm working with my conference president. How many minutes do you need to do to present this? How many minutes do you need to present this to all our pastors when we have our pastors meeting?"
Amen.
And I'm going
Mm.
like, "Oh,
You need to come up with a training curriculum so that you can pass it on to us,
Yeah.
and then we can pass it forward. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah." And
A
we're
pipeline.
working on that.
Work on that. Yeah.
We're literally as we
awesome.
speak, we're working on that.
Yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
so I think and you know what, God's timing is always perfect.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we had gotten this kind of um, velocity at the beginning, we wouldn't have been able to handle it. We would have
Mm.
been literally overwhelmed, literally,
Mm.
when we had a
Mm.
team of 6. We were so
Yeah.
inadequate. Oh, dear
Yeah.
God. Oh.
Oh
and
my goodness. Yes. Oh wow. We would not have been ready.
yeah, and
uh,
and just God knew
yeah.
what kind you can handle a step at a time. And now from a group of 6 to a team of 16, and another 16 that does nothing but the Sabbath school program every Sabbath. I'm
Wow.
going like a team of 32, and
Yeah.
I would have never imagined that a year and a half ago. Justin,
Mm.
I have to just be honest with you, I would have never imagined that. And what God said to me a year and a half ago, I I couldn't see it. I literally could not see it.
Yeah.
And today I'm going, God, man, oh ye of little faith. God, I am so sorry that my faith was so small.
Mm.
Um,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add, Pastor Christine?
I just, there's no way of predicting it, but I completely agree with Mary that there was a reason
Mm.
for the slow incline of exposure, the slow incline of being able to use this material in other places. Our
Mhm.
first year and the way that our team has been built has taken that time, and it
Mm.
comes with people using it and getting to
Mhm.
know it and having it be inspirational for them too.
Mhm.
And so when this pandemic came through, I actually wasn't even, and Manny, you and I haven't talked about this at all. I wasn't part of the conversations when it came to start putting videos out.
Okay.
to do all of having the curriculum available online. And I appreciate that, Manny, because I know that you were trying to protect me.
I was.
Because yeah,
You know,
as chief editor, I was swamped with learning and design and learning. I have had to learn far too much than I had ever wanted to learn about graphic and design and all this.
Haven't we all? Haven't we all?
Yeah. So
All of us.
when I got to see it out and about and seeing all these pastors of our conference involved in it, it felt like such an inspirational gift to me as someone who got to be part of the birthing process, where you sometimes feel like you're alone and trying to push this rock uphill by yourself. And so so now that rock is kind of, it feels like it's flowing back down and everyone else is just joining in, it's nice to see it go beyond us. And we always knew, every devotional we ever had always came back, and we did this initially just to give us encouragement, but we kept saying, this is God's. This is God's. Every single devotional we've ever had, weekly basis, it was starting off with a devotion that said, this is God's baby. We just get to be part of it. He gets to rock it. We're just here to join in. And if it's going to succeed, it's because it's God. If it fails, it's because it wasn't meant to be. It wasn't
Right.
God. And so that helped us come in with a lot more humility, I would say, and a lot more allowing of what God was going to do with it, so that we didn't have to come in and fix and make everything what we thought it should be. So we've been growing in our own way and responding to the world around us, let alone the pandemic, just how our churches have responded, so that we can make this a edifying resource for not only our families, but for our churches and our conferences.
Yes.
At a time where it feels like unity has become sometimes a curse word. So we've been trying to find ways to make this have that unity, encouragement, have that understanding of what it means to connect families and to bring them together, and to have something that just shows that we can have real conversation, honest conversation, and not keep batting around things that we all deal with, but actually have resources that help us with life.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, this is beautiful. And part of the reason that we're having this conversation, and I'm glad that Alex is with us, is we do want to forge a partnership between conferences. Oftentimes we're in our own quarantined experiences. We think we're in quarantine right now, but I think as an Adventist church, whether it's local church or local conferences, for far too long we've been doing our own thing. And I think it's time that we really grew together, and really partner with each other. Right? Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a lot more interconference, at least in the realm of children's ministries. There is a lot more connection between conferences and communications, because we are all in the same boat together.
Yes.
I mean, as soon as church closings happened, all of us were like, I got an overwhelming amount of emails going, what do we do? What are our resources? And at that point I was like, we don't have anything for this right now. So we started reaching across to other conferences, and other conferences shared with us and we shared with them. And so that's a positive from this pandemic, because I think that more of that needed to happen, because we have so many different ideas from so many different points, and we can benefit from sharing with one another. So that's been a really neat thing.
Yeah. As one of my mentors like to say, we're stronger together. And I'm glad that that's the story of children's ministries. And, the reason that I wanted to initiate this conversation was not to, push down the growing together curriculum down on anyone's throat, right? There's so many options out there. There's great resources. But for me personally, and for anyone that really wants to grow younger together as a church, and this is one of my passions as well, Growing Young Adventists is a full-blown grassroots movement in the North American division. And the age demographic, the bracket that's missing from our churches is literally from about 21 to about the 40.
Yeah.
When young adults are, meeting someone special, having their first child, having their second child. And, many of them are considering, okay, what do I need to do to educate my children? They're all pondering and asking the same question about parenting, about how they become, how can they become better parents to their children. And I think this resource emerges, amidst the pandemic of younger demographic that is longing for a resource.
Yeah.
So this is my, utmost and strong recommendation for any young families that might be listening. It's a path, or it's a resource that you can choose to test out to see if you want to become a fully devoted, discipling family in Christ Jesus. And if you did
And the
want,
younger you start, the better.
Yes.
If you
yeah,
start with your kids young.
mhm.
Yeah.
Because the bracket in which the children make their decision for Christ, and I, I heard somebody say this within the Adventist Church framework, 75% of all baptism decisions or formative decisions for Christ is made between the ages 4 and 12.
Right.
Yep. And even younger now. So it's actually down to 10.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that. Huh.
Yeah.
That's even younger. So you need to start even younger.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. There's a lot I've been like, oh, let's wait till you're 10 at least.
But
Yeah, no,
But
that's
see how quickly our young people are growing up.
Yeah.
The
That's true.
exposure that they have because of the internet.
Mm-hmm.
The things that they know at third grade that I didn't know until I was like in high school and stuff like that.
Mm.
You know?
Yep.
The
there's a lot more exposure.
yeah, they were growing up so much faster than we did,
Mhm.
and that we so I get it. I get that it's getting younger and younger because they are getting bombarded sooner and faster.
Yeah. And the faster you act and that the more you engage your children in the content that really ministers to your soul,
Yeah.
you have a better chance of impacting and influencing their lives. So, yeah,
Yeah.
this is the reason that we are presenting this resource to you guys.
Yeah.
Um, and we'll end on just one more note. I know you guys have signed up for probably like an hour session, but we've gone for about 90 minutes. But this is our last question to anyone that's listening and do want to commit to a journey of discipleship. Any last words from our editor and also our children's and family ministries director, and also Alexis? Final words.
I'll go ahead first. I think the biggest reason has kind of been shared just by the testimonies that we've had in this session alone. I think that the reason so many of us parents at this age, I'm just turned 31 yesterday, so or 2 days ago, and it is hard. It is hard to talk about faith if you have any baggage of your own. When you had experienced where faith was something that was a pressure, faith was something that was this check mark to know that you're saved, that this was something that you actually get to choose to do as your own faith journey, and it enlightens and inspires your children. And so to be able to do that, and not only your own faith journey, which is to edify you, but to be able to have that crossover to your children, and to do that as a overflow of your own journey, instead of it being this charge where you have to because you're a parent. This is what defines a good parent, because there's plenty of mom and dad shaming going around. This is a resource to say that if you are wanting to feel like you have this strength in Christ out of that overflow of your relationship with him, you get to disciple, you get to consider this resource. And again, we keep saying resource because this is not the end all be all. This is just a diving board into the pool of what you want to be able to do with your children. And you are the one that they are looking to for mentorship. You are the one that they're looking to for a model. And that's not something that you get to choose. It's a reality of being a parent. And you get to define if this is something to add to that and aid you in it, so that you're not alone in that journey. And this is something that's been very raw and honest about life, as well as about faith and the journey as a Seventh-day Adventist, as a Christian, as all of the journeys that we've shared together. But to use this resource as a way of saying, this is what's going to edify and help me in my journey. And then because of that, I'm going to be able to also share it with my children, because there's that added to it. And out of that journey to do it together. So try it out, mostly because it's edifying and encouraging for you in your faith. If you do this off of trying to fix your kiddos or off of doing the right thing for your kiddos, and it becomes this pressure, and we all have plenty of pressure in life. We don't need more. So don't put that on you. Be kind to yourself.
Kind of like sending your kids to boarding school. No.
Yeah. So yes.
All right.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. I'd say that sometimes we like our faith to look like a neat, clean line that is perfect in every way, and that we especially don't like our children to see our imperfections.
Mm,
But our kids, that's part of discipleship too, is allowing kids to see the messiness and that God still loves us through that. So I would encourage families that are going to do this curriculum together to be honest when they're doing the discussions and when they're sharing with one another. Be willing to be vulnerable with your kids because they are watching and they're learning from you and they're growing. And I've growing up, it was the same where we were encouraged to study our lesson on a regular basis. And I hardly remember any of those lessons. But I do remember my dad sharing with me how he left the church and came back to the church and how God guided him to that. And he told me that story when I was very young. And that is something that has always stuck with me, that no matter what, God is with me. And even if I walk away, he is gently calling me back home. So those types of things, if you share them with your family, if you share them with your children, they're going to remember those things too. So be willing to be vulnerable as you go through that discipleship process.
Amen. Amen.
I'm just gonna go with this. I just want to say a double amen to what Christine said and what Alexa said. One of my favorite saying is, "You can't share what you don't have."
Yeah.
And so, my thought is, if you're struggling, just start with your own journey.
Yes. Yes.
Start with your own journey. Because kids see through us. Start with your own journey. Have your own quiet time. Get your own. Look at that. Check out, if anything, check out the student quarterly for disciples. Just journey on your own. And as you journey on your own, I honestly believe that God will lead you to what you need to do next with your family. That you don't have to say, what are the 1, 2, 3? I believe that God will lead you to what you need to do specifically for your family as you have your own journey. Because you, at the end of the day, we can't share what we don't have. And so if there's any of the discussion that has inspired you through the last 90 minutes, hopefully it's me just tasting it for yourself. Right? Taste and see. Tasting it for yourself, as Justin said. And then from there, see where God leads. That's really all I say.
Amen. Amen. And the whole taste begins at growingtogether.church. Okay. I love this website name. It's literally growing together.church, the church growing together. So that's the journey that I've been on and that we have been on. And we are introducing you guys to be on that journey.
I want to say thank you, Justin and Alexis, for allowing us to be part of your conference journey. This is humbling for us.
Thank you.
No,
Thank you for
you
taking
guys.
the time for us.
Yeah.
No, thank you guys for persevering even through the slow progression and the formative, I guess, moments of growing together and just pushing through. Thank you so much for your, persevering effort to make this a reality for all of us, and spending some time with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. For any additional questions, if you guys want to, ask any questions, I think, I guess on that website there's a contact page where you guys can access, put in your name, your email, and ask follow-up questions. me and Alexis here at the conference, we're always available to also answer your questions as well. So we want to make sure that you know that. With that, we pray that God will bless you and your family this evening, and we'll see you next time.
God bless.
God
God
bless.
bless.